the Assyrian Empire. Even its name meant fear. This was a civilization that ruled not only with armies, but with mindset. And the man who rose to command that mindset was unlike any king before him. His name was Ashurbanipal. Ashurbanipal was not meant to be king. The throne was prepared for someone else. But palace intrigues, sudden deaths, and quiet removals reshaped the line of succession, and the crown fell, unexpectedly, into his hands. That accident forced him to do two things: prove his legitimacy, become different from every ruler before him. Not the sword, but the stylus from childhood, Ashurbanipal was trained unusually. He learned reading and writing cuneiform script. The same education given to priests in Assyria, this was dangerous. Because knowledge was not royal property, it belonged to the priesthood. Kings were given interpretations, never the original texts. Ashurbanipal refused summaries. He read the tablets himself, interrupting the gods. The Assyrian system worked like this: the gods speak, priests interpret, the king obeys. Ashurbanipal broke this chain. He read omens directly. He interpreted celestial signs personally. He placed himself between the gods and the priests. This was not religion. This was politics. Because the king was no longer ruling for the gods. He was ruling as the man who understood them, a silent threat in the palace. The generals noticed. The priests grew uneasy. An educated king could not be easily manipulated, could not be ruled by fear alone, could not be deceived. But Ashurbanipal revealed nothing. He listened, he watched, he recorded. One tablet preserves his thinking. Knowledge, when hidden, becomes power. When shared, it becomes weakness. The true claim to the throne. When Ashurbanipal ascended the throne, his first command was not war. It was not execution. It was this: everything written before my reign shall be brought to me. This was not the order of a warrior. It was the strategy of a statesman. Because Ashurbanipal understood something fundamental. A sword can conquer a city, but knowledge can conquer an entire civilization. A decision that changed history. At this moment, Ashurbanipal made a choice. He would gather all knowledge into one place, one archive, one center of power. Because the one who controls knowledge does not merely rule the present, he controls the future. And that decision would lead him to build the greatest library of the ancient world, while quietly setting the stage for the fall of his empire. The world's first great archive. In Assyria, knowledge was sacred, but it was scattered, hidden in temples, locked in scribes' chambers, buried in distant provincial archives. To Ashurbanipal, this was not a weakness. It was an opportunity. One center, one mind. Ashurbanipal understood something no ruler before him had. When knowledge is scattered, power is scattered as well. So he made a decision that changed history. For the first time, a king declared, all knowledge will be gathered in one city. That city was Nineveh. Wisdom taken by force. This was not an invitation, it was an order. Royal decrees were sent across the empire, to temples hiding sacred tablets, to priests guarding prophecy texts, to schools charting the stars. The message was unmistakable: bring them, or I will come for them. And they obeyed. A library, or a weapon. Thousands of clay tablets were transported to Nineveh. They contained medical treatments, birth and death rituals, astronomical records, prophecy lists, curses and incantations. It looked like a library, but in truth, it was a weapon of governance. With this knowledge, the king could anticipate plagues, turn eclipses into political signs. Understand what the people feared most. Breaking the power of the priests. This is where the balance shifted. Before, the gods spoke to priests. Priests interpreted, kings obeyed. Now, the king read for himself. This was a silent coup. For the first time, the priesthood no longer controlled knowledge. Ashurbanipal knew exactly what he was doing. One tablet records his words. Those who hide knowledge weaken the state. The king reads, the scribes copy. Ashurbanipal didn't just collect knowledge, he controlled it. Tablets were reviewed, errors corrected, copies ordered. Some texts were marked with a chilling line, copied for Ashurbanipal. That sentence meant one thing. Knowledge no longer belongs to the people. It belongs to the throne. An obsession with the future. Above all else, Ashurbanipal was obsessed with prophecy. He wanted to know when rebellion would rise, when the king would die, when disaster would strike. Prophecy, tablets were stored in the most guarded chambers. Because a ruler who reads the future controls the present. But there was a problem. Knowledge was growing. But it was no longer shared. It was concentrated in the hands of one man. And history has shown us again and again, when too much knowledge is held by one ruler, balance collapses. Ashurbanipal knew this. And still, he continued, because his next step was to add something to knowledge. Knowledge alone was not enough. Ashurbanipal understood a brutal truth. People do not obey what they understand. They obey what they fear. And so fear became state policy. Cities that rebelled were not simply punished. They were made into examples. Leaders were flayed alive. Their skins were displayed on city gates. Prisoners were chained, mutilated, and marched through the streets. And none of this was hidden. Ashurbanipal ordered every punishment to be written down. Tablets recorded it all. Names, crimes. Methods, because fear spreads faster when it is documented. One inscription reads, "I did this so that those who see it will never rebel." This was not cruelty for pleasure. This was strategy. The greatest threat to Ashurbanipal did not come from outside the empire. It came from within. His own brother ruled Babylon, and Babylon wanted independence. What followed was not just a war, it was a civil fracture. Assyrian armies fought Assyrian-trained soldiers. Resources drained. Loyalty cracked. Ashurbanipal won. Babylon fell. But victory came at a cost. The empire was exhausted. The provinces watched carefully, and enemies beyond the borders began to prepare. When Ashurbanipal died, he left behind a fragile throne. His successors lacked. Authority, intelligence, control rebellions erupted. And then the unthinkable happened. Nineveh was attacked. The city that once terrified the world was surrounded. Walls collapsed. Palaces burned. The capital of Assyria fell. But in the fire, something strange occurred. As Nineveh burned, the palace library collapsed. Clay tablets fell into the flames. And instead of being destroyed, they hardened. The fire baked them, preserved them. Because of that destruction, thousands of texts survived into the modern world. Medical knowledge, astronomy, law, mythology, including the Epic of Gilgamesh. Ashurbanipal failed to save his empire, but his obsession with knowledge saved history itself. Ashurbanipal ruled with fear. He centralized knowledge. He crushed rebellion. Yet his empire collapsed, and his library endured. History remembers him not as a conqueror, but as the king who tried to control the future and accidentally preserved the past. Empires are built with swords, but they are remembered by what they choose to write down.